So this is my game engine that I built for Global Game Jam 2018 called NetEngine. What this is it's a terminal emulator game designed to allow teachers to create scenario-based network and Linux learning environments and challenges, and allow students to explore some of these basic principles of network-based reconnaissance tools, Linux operating system configuration and commands, and possibly even a focus on foreign language studies with some of the multilingual support for the game. It's really a very raw prototype, kind of just proof of concept of kind of how a game engine could work to build out some of these kind of like scenario-based learning environments. Just a kind of real quick focus in terms of kind of what this was for, in terms of teaching cybersecurity concepts in school, high school, middle school, what have you. It's very difficult based on kind of many factors. So some of the problems that this was intended to solve is real world labs are timely to set up, and when you're talking about working in schools or you have liability scenarios for kind of allowing access to the network or allowing certain tools to be installed, what have you. So it makes it hard to teach some of these kind of real hands-on kind of project-based learning scenarios. In terms of kind of like documentation, current man pages or documentation in general can be very dense for people just kind of getting started. Provisioning or working within existing educational infrastructure is challenging. Like I said, sometimes you're working with Windows, sometimes you have Macs, sometimes you're working on Chromebooks, sometimes you can install things, sometimes you can't. This really only needs Python and running on any operating system. And this could doesn't really help us on Chromebooks, but one thing at a time. Tools with a one-path scenario provide limited usage and implementation. There's a lot of great tools out there, but once you get through them once, they're kind of done, and the kids know how to beat it, and they kind of lose interest. So this is meant to be able to create as many scenarios as you want. ESL or English as a second language students may get left behind in some of the details when we're talking about kind of self-learning or reading documentation or just in general. With tech in general, I know a lot of the tools are kind of English language tools, and so this allows educators to put documentation and actually change the text in the game for different languages. And students, actually I think this is for teachers. Teachers have to have a high level of technology, for teachers to teach these concepts, they may have a high level of knowledge, but they might not have the time or resources to actually go set up a lab and do all the configuration and all those kind of things. So with that, I'll kind of get into the tool. When I say this is kind of a configuration-driven environment, we have a single configuration file here, as you can see. And what that does is this kind of splits the configuration into different machines. So here you can see I have 3 machines on a network configured. They're all in the same subnet. Potentially you could get into multiple network scenarios as well, or subnets and things like that. Kind of what I have here is I can set up users on the system. I can set up groups, the different commands that are available on a system, or tools, I probably should have called this. So this system has SSH, it has netcat, and it has nmap installed. So somebody logging into this system has those tools at their disposal. If you want to set up kind of a like a clue-based challenge where people need to kind of figure out some clues to figure out their next step, you have the history here. So you can kind of leave some clues here, and if somebody types history, they kind of get some clues. Processes on the system. This really wasn't fleshed out yet, but and firewall obviously not a real process, but kind of see what's running on a system was kind of the thought there. Firewall rules. This is a networking-based game, so we kind of have the ability to set up ingress and egress, and both allow and deny rules. So like this system allows all outgoing or egress traffic for all protocols, things like that. This didn't get too fleshed out, but obviously you're dealing with operating systems and the ability to scaffold out a file system and kind of drop files. That's kind of how this would build out, but this one would be kind of time consuming. So that's kind of what all it would take to add or set up a system. So I'll kind of show you what the gameplay looks like. Let's see here. So if I start NetEngine, it asks me what language I want to use. I'll start off with English. So I kind of start off logging into my first machine that we could see here, this 192.168.0.4, and I can see what tools I have installed. So on this instance, I have Nmap, Netcat, SSH at my disposal. I can see my IP address, or obviously this could show subnet mask, what have you. What else do I have here? For any of these tools that I'm not sure how to use, this is where we have our configurable man pages. So I can kind of man Nmap, and this is basically a configurable documentation. So if you're working with 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th graders, you can kind of customize to your learning environment in terms of what you want people to know about the various tools. And again, they don't have access to the tool. It's an abstraction, but still more hands-on than kind of many other alternatives. What that kind of looks like over here in code is I can configure this. So I configure my man page. I configure English and Spanish. So what I can do here is if I run language, I can actually switch this to Spanish. And now if I ran my man page again on Nmap, I would get a Spanish representation of that tool. So you could do this for any languages. Let's see, what else do you have? Let me check my. I can see. So like I said, if you're dealing with kind of a gameplay scenario, you can drop history on a machine. So here, if I ran history, I could see that somebody catted a certain file and then SSH'd into another machine. So maybe that's a scenario or a hint of kind of where to go next. So let's say I want to run Nmap on this machine to see what else is on the network. I can do that. Obviously, this is a very basic, just seeing what IPs are on the network. This doesn't support port scanning or anything like that yet. But let's say I wanted to, and notice I could run Nmap from this computer with, and it was okay. What I am not showing yet is the firewall configuration. But let's say I SSH into this other machine, and again, this is very raw. I'm not using a user or any kind of authentication. But you can see here now I'm in another machine. I can see what tools I have on this machine. So you can see I have Netcat, Wireshark, SSH, Nmap. So this is different. Again, I have config will show me that. So this one, you can't see it, but if I'm to run Nmap on this machine, I have it configured in my configuration file to that. Give me 1 second. Whoop. Oh no. So what I have here is that I actually have egress traffic, all traffic denied. So if I'm on this machine and I run Nmap again, I actually get an error message. Basically, that's in Spanish. If we set the language to English and run our Nmap again, firewall rule violated. You have been detected. So this is really where a lot of the work needs to be done still. It's kind of setting up these rule engines, and so that based on the configuration, um, if somebody does, some kind of command that violates a rule, that's kind of where the rules of the gameplay come in. Um, so that's kind of it. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Kind of, these are the configurable add-ons. I didn't really get anything for Netcat or Ping implemented, or Wireshark, but these are kind of the things that, basic network recon tools, and when should you use them, and things like that. So that's it for now. I can exit out of my game, and that is NetEngine. Thank you.